Well, a long 8 months without high school football is finally coming to an end, and Gridiron Glory is back on air. We've added 2 new conferences to our coverage this year, and I promise you will not want to miss all of the info that we've got packed into tonight's preview show. The premiere of Gridiron Glory Season 19 kicks off right now. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back into Studio A for the first time this fall. My name is Joseph Payton, and I am absolutely honored to be your host for this season of Gridiron Glory. Our reporters and myself, we're going to give it all we got all season long to make sure that this show is your #1 source for all things Southeast Ohio football. Well, some teams in our coverage are probably looking to build off of last year's success, while others, they may want to forget 2016 altogether. Let's have a look at how we got here today with a recap of last season's action.
2016 season had everything a football fan could imagine. Triumph, heartbreak, parity, passion, intensity, and most importantly, grit. Football historians, they had their hands full last year as some teams essentially rewrote their program's history books. Like how about those 2016 Waterford Wildcats? TVC Hawking champs, they handed the 3-time defending conference champ Trimble Tomcats their first Hawking loss since 2012. Then they made it to the playoffs for the first time since 2002. And oh, by the way, won the first 2 playoff games in school history. And since we're talking conference champions, those Buckeyes over at Nelsonville York were some outside dogs last year. I'm talking hungry, foaming at the mouth, ready to be cut loose off the chain after going winless in conference the year before. 2016 saw them go 6-0 in conference, winning the TVC Ohio for the first time since 2010. They also captured their first playoff win in 18 years, beating SBC champion Zane Trace. But how could you not when you had both Gridiron Glory Coach of the Year Rusty Richards calling the shots and Player of the Year Alex Mount grinding out on the field? But due to graduation, NY says goodbye to Mount, and last season we had to say goodbye to the SEOAL, the state of Ohio's oldest non-city athletic league. 2016 was the conference's final year with only Jackson, Logan, and Warren remaining, and it was the Jackson Ironmen who took home the conference title for the 5th time in the last 7 years. And last but not least, the MVL, and boy, was it a wild race to the finish for the teams in that league. It seemed like everybody just kept beating up on each other in that conference. First, Philo beats Sheridan, then Sheridan snaps Tri-Valley's 47-game conference win streak, and then Tri-Valley beats Philo. So Tri-Valley, Sheridan, and Philo, they all grab a share of the MVL conference crown and what was probably the best conference title race in our coverage. So if 2016 was any indication of how crazy and exciting 2017 can be, I think we're in for one wild ride.
Hey, if that doesn't get you fired up for week 1, I don't know what will. But lucky for us, a week from this very moment, we'll have a full slate of games to discuss, and with that, also some new teams to discuss. And as mentioned earlier, we're expanding our horizons a little for the 19th season of Gridiron Glory. This season, we will be covering the brand new Frontier Athletic Conference. Our very own Blake Baker is here to give us the lowdown on some new teams. Blake, you've been on the move, my man. Tell me what's going on.
Joseph, I've hit the road and the books to learn all I can about this thrilling new conference. And I have to say, I am geeked for the start of this season, and I think our viewers at home should be too. Chillicothe, Hillsboro, McLean, Miami Trace, and Washington Courthouse High Schools all left their previous home in the SCOL, and they opted to join a familiar face on our program, the Jackson Ironmen, to form the FAC.
All right, so you've hit the books, you've hit the road, now drop some knowledge on me. What can we expect to see? We'll go ahead and start with Chillicothe.
Cavaliers are coming off their 2nd playoff appearance in school history and have some big-time names leading the charge for this season. Legendary coach Ron Hinton called quarterback Brandon Moffmer the best athlete he's had in his 43 years of coaching. And he must be right, because Moffmer earned Player of the Year in the Southeast District last season. The kid shines in a run-heavy offense, and he's efficient with his arm, too. Couple that with a versatile set of skill guys on the perimeter, and spirits are high out in Cavalier country.
And rightfully so. So let's go ahead and get into week 1 stuff. Chillicothe's first conference game is against Hillsboro. What's the word on the Indians this year?
Just looking at results from last season, it comes down to clicking on both sides of the ball on the same night. The defense allowed 40 or more points 5 times in 2016, and the Indians lost all 4 of those games. The offense scored over 40 points 3 times, and they won all those games. Whatever Hillsborough did in its final 3 matchups of 2016, it worked for them because they were victors in all of them. So despite struggles the rest of the season, we'll see what kind of momentum those wins can carry.
Yeah, we'll have to see if that momentum carries at all. You know, one of those wins, it did come against arch rival McLean. Do you think that the offseason treated the Tigers well?
I would say yes. This is a team that won 0 games the season before Jeremy Andrews took the helm, and the vibe is optimistic even after just 1 win last season. After a roster full of underclassmen the past 2 years, this one is chock full of 2 and even 3-year starters. Nearly every guy on the O-line falls under that category. And as a whole, this squad really competes. Expect more wins from the Tigers in 2017.
All right, now we just talked about the Tigers. Let's move on to the Panthers. What have you noticed about Miami Trace, Blake?
Well, Miami Trace is the only school in this conference that hired a new head coach this offseason. And with the new coach comes a new game plan. The Panthers ran a run-first offense last season, but Jerry Williams wants to spread the field a little more from now on, and he's focused on developing his skill players to fit that mold. If he can do that and bring the toughness he's been preaching to life, he can really have some success right away.
All right, Blake, now rounding out the list of new teams, Washington Courthouse. So introduce us to the Blue Lions, man.
If there's one thing that Chuck Williamson preached to his team this offseason, it's been finish, finish, finish. The Blue Lions began last season 5-0, but defensive lapses late in the year cost them a playoff spot even with 7 wins. That same defense does return 9 starters, though, and should anchor a talented team looking for a taste of the postseason.
All right, and speaking of defense, the Ironmen over in Jackson, they always have a stout defense on that side of the ball. So will that be the case in 2017?
Oh, yeah. I expect that we'll be seeing a lot of that traditional Iron Curtain defense, as well as an explosive running game led by Blake McCoy. Those seem to be staples in the Jackson program. The only question mark in this team comes from a battle at the quarterback position. And with some brand new competition on the schedule, that position becomes even more crucial. I feel like I've talked a mile a minute, but there's just so much to know about all these new teams. I guess you all just have to learn along with us on the quest for the first ever FAC title.
That's right. It's going to be an interesting race, I'm sure, and I think we're all just as excited about it as you are. Thanks a lot, Blake. All right, well, we're only live on air 1 night a week, so if you're looking for more, we've got that on lock for you. Head on over to woub.org/gridiron. We'll have all kinds of content being posted there throughout the week to hold you over before the next big game. Recaps, previews, and feature stories, whatever you might need, you can find it on our site. And as the only independent team in our coverage, the Logan Chieftains, they're quite literally in a league of their own. Clark Wicks is here with me now. And Clark, do you think senior quarterback Brady Walsh will be enough for the Chieftains to bounce back from a lackluster 3-7 season?
While they did lose around 15 seniors, including 3-year starting lineman Corey Henthorn, Chieftain fans can remain calm as the Logan backfield will be tough to stop this season. According to head coach Billy Burke, Brady Walsh has improved tremendously after struggling during his first season under center. From his accuracy to his confidence in the pocket, Walsh is ready to lead this Logan team against some tough opponents. With Walsh at quarterback and Tyler Cummins and Preston Yates as his running backs, Logan should have no issue putting up points this season. That being said, the Chieftains did lose some receivers and defensive backs to graduation. But you know how it works, Joseph. It's all about the next man up. If those holes are filled, the Chieftains will be ready to turn it around after last year's disappointing season.
You know, although Logan, they'll be playing some tough teams like Dublin Jerome and Scioto, the games they have circled on their calendar include rival TVC teams like Athens and Meigs. So what's the Ohio going to look like this year?
Well, unlike the Chieftains, last year's top TVC Ohio teams, Athens and Nelsonville York, are both starting new quarterbacks. Both the Bulldogs and the Buckeyes assembled some dominant offenses last season as Athens quarterback Brenton Sano and Nelsonville York running back Alex Mount shared the title of Offensive Player of the Year. While the departure of these offensive juggernauts will certainly be felt, some teams lost more than others. Losing players is a part of the game, Joseph. You know that. It's all about how you bounce back. But some shoes are big to fill. That being said, I'm interested in seeing how reigning Coach of the Year Rusty Richards handles NY's upcoming season.
Talented young kids. Like you just mentioned, we had 3 kids in the backfield. But you know what? We also lost like 4 offensive linemen. So, and we had 13 seniors that not only were they good football players, they were leaders. So a lot of what we're worried about right now as coaching staff is who's going to lead.
Well, the Buckeyes, they'll definitely have a different look about them this year. And you know, Coach Richards, as you mentioned, the reigning Coach of the Year, we'll have to see what he can do in his second year at the helm at Nelsonville. But what are the other teams in the Ohio going to look like? I know a lot of players haven't graduated yet.
You're definitely right, Joey P. The TVC Ohio is still loaded. Over in MacArthur, the Vinton County Vikings have 2 all-conference players in the backfield, with Nayland Yates at quarterback and Hunter Nichols at running back. If the Vikings can beef up that defense, which allowed around 35 points per game last season, they could have a real shot at the TVC Ohio crown. Much like the Vikings, the Wellston Rockets have a very familiar background. With the departure of three-time All-TVC running back Nick Cox, senior Travis J. John will have an opportunity to shine alongside quarterback Michael Graham. J. John was named an all-conference player while splitting carries with Cox. He should be in store for a monster year as he takes on a heavier workload.
For sure. And you know, J. John and Yates, they're both on our Player of the Year watch list. Do you think that they're going to be the force that could possibly drive them to a TVC Ohio title?
I think the Vikings and the Rockets will finish 3rd and 4th respectively. Nelsonville, York, and Athens are still my favorites to win it all. I'm going to give Athens the edge between the two as the Buckeyes did lose so many seniors. While replacing Brendan Sano is no easy task, junior quarterback Clay Davis will have all-conference receiver Robert Dickelman to make the job a little bit easier. If Davis can steer the ship half as well as Sano did, Athens should be hard to stop.
Well, you know, there's no doubt that they know how to put points on the board over there in the Plains. Thanks for joining us, Clark. Well, if you ever happen to fall asleep before our show starts or, you know, just want to re-watch some highlights, click over to YouTube and go to the WOUB PBS channel. All of our episodes live on YouTube where you can re-watch all of your favorite highlights and segments. You can even watch our shows live on YouTube as they happen. And as Billy Mays would say, but wait, there's more. All of our video content lives on YouTube as well. We have plenty of football eye candy for you throughout the week on there, so please go over there and check it out. Check out everything that we've got. Now, since this year I've taken on the host role, it left a little bit of a hole in our coverage with the TVC Hawking, but have no fear. Gridiron Glory, here at Gridiron Glory, we believe in the next reporter up mentality, and that next reporter up is TVC Hawking reporter Duncan Goldberg. Now, Duncan, break down the conference for me this year a little bit.
As you know all too well, Joey P., the TVC Hawking was stacked with talent last year. Waterford was quite possibly the best team that we've seen in the Hawking since the 2013 state runner-up Trimble Tomcats. And speaking of those Tomcats, they may have not won the Hawking last year, but any other year, they probably would have. With the talent that they had, they were extraordinary. And the same goes for the Southern Tornadoes. If they could have stayed healthy going down the stretch with guys like Blake Johnson and Jalen Blanks, they could have easily been one of the top teams in the conference. But not only was the conference top heavy, but so was the middle of the pack with teams like Belpre and Miller. But this is a new year, and with the new season, there may be a bit of a shakeup. Waterford is losing a lot of their primary players, but they are still returning a decent-sized senior class and should have a bit of talent to go along with very good coach Eric McCutcheon. The Trimble Tomcats lost their stud running back Cam Curry, but they're bringing back quarterback Gary Brooks and also a crafty running back in Dominique Pickett. Both Pickett and Brooks should have a lot of time to make plays too this year, as they have a very good offensive line as always. I expect both of these teams to compete for the Hawking crown this year, but I think they will finish 3rd and 2nd in the conference respectively.
All right, so we just talked about Trimble and Waterford, but if you don't think it's either of those two teams that win it, who's it going to be?
Well, I don't know if it's all the hype just getting to me, Joey P., but I'm going to have to say I think it's the Miller Falcons. They have been the talk of the Hawking all summer long, and I just couldn't lay off picking them to win the conference. The Falcons are returning almost everyone besides their starting quarterback, Cole Guile. But after watching his replacement, Colby Bartley, earlier this summer, I feel confident saying they are in good hands. But the main reason why I'm picking the Falcons to win the conference is because of 4-year starter and 3-year captain, Seattle Compton. Compton is a man amongst boys, and in my opinion is the best player in the conference. Compton is the anchor on the defense at the middle linebacker position, and he is also the fullback on the offensive side, creating holes for players like Carson Starlin and Zach Waldrop. And he is also pretty decent at running the football. But even though the hype is there, the Falcons aren't getting cocky. They know that this is foreign territory for them because they haven't won the Hawking since 1999. So they know to tread water carefully.
I mean, you want to have confidence, but you also don't want to get a big head going into it. So we all know what we're capable of doing, and we come to practice every day lifting, busting our butt. That way the potential we have, like we can prove it, so we don't fall flat on our faces, and we don't have a big upset season because we all have big hopes this year.
Now, I know that these guys in Trimble are going to be mad that I just predicted them to not win the conference because they believe that they are going to bring the conference title back to Gloucester. But for the other teams in the conference, it's just added motivation to prove me wrong.
For sure, Duncan, I agree with all that. And you know, sticking with the Trimble trend here that you said at the end of that, there have been some issues out there in Gloucester with their stadium. So tell us what you know about what's going on out there.
Yeah, it hasn't been that great. There was some worry that the Tomcats were not going to get to play in their home stadium this year, but thankfully that will not be the case. After about 80 years of wear and tear, it seems as if the Gloucester Memorial Stadium is going to need some changes as their home bleachers were deemed unsafe. The way that the Tomcats are going to get this season in at home is that they will actually be moving the scoreboard and adding bleachers to where the current scoreboard is right now. This is not the long-term solution, but was the best available option for the stadium and for the team to have their games at home. The ultimate goal is to replace their old bleachers with some new ones, but we will have to wait and see with those plans, as nothing is 100% for certain with that.
Well, hopefully, you know, those seniors get to play at home. It looks like they will this year. You hope for the best for them. Duncan, thanks for the great work, man. All right, now I need our viewers to do me a favor. Get out your cell phones, open up the Snapchat app if you have it, and scan our Snap code right there on your screen to add us as a friend. Man, technology is wild, isn't it? This feature on Snapchat still blows my mind. If that doesn't work, just type in Gridiron Glory to add us as a friend. Our Snap story will have some exclusive looks at some of the games we cover on Friday nights. And hey, don't be afraid to send us some snaps as well. We want to see what you're all about, and you never know. You can end up on our show as our Snapchat of the week. Well, you probably heard us talk about a few of the teams in the Scioto Valley Conference last year, but this year, we're expanding our coverage to the entire SVC. Here to give us a preview of those teams is senior reporter Josh Gregory.
Well, Joey P., it is great to be back on set with you. We got brand new teams, brand new season. Let's get right to it, starting with the team that won it all last year, and we're talking about the Zane Trace Pioneers.
And you just mentioned it, the defending champs. So they definitely have some high expectations this year. Do you think they can do it again?
Joey, I think their chances are pretty high. For starters, they won every game in the SVC last year. And JP, the Pioneers' backfield is stacked this season. Running back Etheridge Games and fullback Will Palmer combined for over 1,100 rushing yards last year, and they're back this season. And let's not forget that Zane Trace runs the ball a lot, so these two will be key. However, last year's quarterback Austin Harris is gone, and he rushed for over 1,200 yards and threw for almost 2,000. Ty Shanton will fill in for him, and first-year head coach Don Coons says he's confident the 190-pound senior has what it takes.
You know, it's safe to say that both Coach Coons and Shanton have some huge shoes to fill. Now, Josh, Unioto, they usually dominate this conference. In fact, before last year, they won the SVC 10 times in a row. So we can't sleep on them, right?
You're definitely right about that, Joey. And I think they will have a tough run for the crown this year. The Sherman Tanks went 6-1 last year in the SVC, losing only to Zane Trace. However, they also said goodbye to a quarterback, Clay Edler, who rushed for 18 touchdowns and threw for another 20. Now, the Tanks are returning all of their running backs, so they still have some key players in Jamarcus Carroll and Dayton Poole, but the loss of Edler looks to be pretty tough for the blue and gold.
I'll agree with you on that, Josh, but I'm also excited to see what Nehemiah Feltz can do for them. Now, let's talk about Piketon. They finished third last year, but they also lost their starting quarterback.
And that's a problem for a lot of these teams in this conference. They're all looking for new QBs. Just like Edler, Gabe Berkheimer was critical to the Red Streak's success, rushing for 1,000 yards and throwing for almost 2,000. Piketon is probably going to rely on Zane Barker at running back. He rushed for about 350 yards and 7 touchdowns last year, and they've even got him slotted as backup QB behind sophomore Connor Galloway. If Barker finds his groove early this season, I think Piketon has a solid chance of competing in those top 3 spots again.
Yeah, I think they have a solid chance as well. So now that we've talked about the teams that our viewers may be familiar with, go ahead and give us an introduction to the teams that they've not seen.
Gladly. I think our viewers are in for a surprise this year. I'm excited to see these teams in action. We have Adena, Huntington, Southeastern, Westfall, and Paint Valley. And here's the way I see things stacking up in the SVC. Southeastern and Adena tied for 4th last year, but I think Southeastern has an edge this year. In fact, call it a big prediction, but I see Southeastern either tying or passing Piketon for that 3rd spot behind Unioto. The Panthers are returning quarterback Dalton Chaffin and running back Dakota Hauser, Carson Stauffer, and Greg Rager, so they don't have as much rebuilding to do. Whereas Adena lost quarterback Jake Dawson and tight end Wyatt Shanton. They still have running back J.D. Blevins, so I don't think they'll fall too far off the map.
Well, Josh, you know, it's going to be interesting to see what goes down in the SVC this year. Thanks for the good work, man. And here at Gridiron Glory, we want you to get all the content that you can possibly handle. So naturally, I've got to plug our Facebook account. I know the kids, they're more inclined to use Twitter, but you guys would be surprised the amount of traffic we get on Facebook. So go give the Gridiron Glory Facebook page alike. Please, we have all kinds of content on there. We link it so you can go check it right out, and I promise you will not want to miss out. Now, one of the hardest leagues in our coverage area is the MVL, with powerhouse programs of Tri-Valley and Sheridan constantly competing for the championship. We've got my man Scott McDonald on desk to give us a lowdown.
You talk about difficult conferences. The MVL has 3 defending championships: Sheridan, Tri-Valley, and Philo. They all split a piece of the proverbial pie last season. And of course, all 3 teams want to repeat, but perhaps they want to do it outright this time around.
Now, Tri-Valley, they're a perennial power in that conference, but, what's going to be their story this year?
Well, the Scotties missed the playoffs last year, going 9-1, but that was supposed to be a bit of a rebuilding year with mostly juniors starting. Well, as time goes, those juniors are now seniors, and Tri-Valley is returning 17 starters. This includes quarterback Andrew Newsome, who led the offense to average over 35 points per game. And he's going to have plenty of weapons at his disposal. Receivers Jake McLaughlin and Dow Cameron will be threats in the vertical game, with running back Caleb Craig creating a headache for opponents. But the offense did struggle at times last year, but with a year under their belts of some of the starters, expected to be a strong point this year. And you can't talk about Tri-Valley without talking about their stout defense that they constantly put out there. This year, it's only going to be better, which has to be scary to think about, considering they held opponents to under 10 points 8 times last year. They returned virtually every starter. Chase Dinan and Nathan Lawler headlined the back 7, and they can anchor this team to another potential championship.
Well, Scott, you've hyped up Tri-Valley. Is there anyone you think that can challenge them?
Obviously, Tri-Valley, as usual, is the team to beat in the MVL, but I think their next closest competition is a small school located in Duncan Falls, the Philo Electric. Yes, they lost quarterback Nathan Baker and receiver Jake Mueller, but this was a team that prided itself on its defense last year, and this year it's going to be much of the same, especially with Isaac Gill playing quarterback for the first time. We did see during the 7-on-7s this summer, Gill looked very polished, which isn't exactly what you would expect from someone who's never played the position. His accuracy on the deep ball looked great and did not make too many bad decisions, which is huge, and that's all you can expect from a rookie quarterback. Now, he's not going to be expected to be Nathan Baker, but he has the playmaking abilities that the MVL will need to be on the lookout for.
So you're telling me they have their safety playing quarterback. So do you think those skills relate or translate in any way?
Yeah, absolutely. The safety is often considered the quarterback of the defense because they need to see the whole field. They need to know where the receivers are, where the backs are going, the stunts of the linemen. So as a safety, Gill already has an understanding of offensive schemes and plays. And as mentioned earlier, his arm strength and accuracy seems polished enough, but 7-on-7s doesn't need to be said, but they are significantly different than games. So he's still going to be tested throughout this year, especially in the difficult MVL.
Oh, absolutely. Difficult conference. So Tri-Valley and Philo at the top. How do you see the rest of this league playing out?
Well, here's my surprise pick of the season. John Glenn Muskies. Yes, last year they lost 3 games by a touchdown or less, and their veteran leadership should allow those close games to be on the winning side this year. And like Tri-Valley, they return most of their starters and will try to replace quarterback Matthew Stewart with senior Justin Haycock. The way I see the rest of the MVL playing out is Sheridan in 4th, but their standing heavily depends on how well quarterback Ethan Heller and receiver Ethan Tabor mesh together. But spots 3 through 5 are essentially a toss-up. I see those 3 teams as near equal of one another, but I will say this, Maysville is the only one returning their starting quarterback of those 3 in Connor Sidwell, which by mid-season could push them up potentially to contender status.
You know, it was a wild race in this conference last year. Could be shaking out to be the same this year or something similar. Scott, thanks for the great work, man. Okay, I've already told you to check out our website, Facebook, and our Snapchat. Now I need you to give us a follow on Twitter. Our handle is pretty self-explanatory, @Gridiron Glory. Who would have guessed? Our Twitter is a great way for you to keep up with all the games on Friday nights as they happen with live score updates. And don't be afraid to tweet at us. We love to hear from you guys. And of course, you can always give me a shout out also @GG_JoeyP. Of course, your tweets and opinions will become more and more important as the season wears on, especially when you are deciding who will be the 2017 Gridiron Glory Player of the Year. Now, senior reporter Eric Freak II slides on to side set with me. We love looking ahead. When Player of the Year talks come around, what names are we going to hear?
Hopefully it's not about what you hear. Everyone on this list will show us why they are here. Some guys have been consistently dominant the past few seasons, but our extended coverage brings new players from the Scioto Valley Conference and the brand new Frontier Athletic Conference. But I like beginning with the familiar. So let's start with the Jackson Ironmen, a new member of the FAC. Blake McCoy is back one more year, and he accumulated over 1,000 yards last season. But he split carries with Johnny Farley, who graduated, so expect his output to skyrocket. One of the newest members of our coverage, Chillicote's quarterback Brandon Moffmer, dropping dimes everywhere. Moffmer had over 1,000 yards passing and rushing while scoring 30 touchdowns. And he already has a Player of the Year award under his belt. Nayland. This will be another name you'll hear a lot. A very balanced quarterback out of Vinton County. He threw 17 touchdowns last year and scurried in 12. Patrick Brown is looking to prove that he can have 20 touchdowns without 1,000-yard receiver Trey Craycraft. Trace Albin scored 12 touchdowns 4 different ways. And last season, you see Keegan, Braden, Dominique, all underclassmen, the youngest being Mr. Wilburn. We'll see this sophomore speed in full effect without Hunter Edwards or Alex Mount in the backfield. Braden Belleville, this man managed to rush for 14 touchdowns with Player of the Year candidate Isaac Huffman and Tyler McCutcheon combining for a majority of the touches. Now Belleville is the main man, and the ceiling is the roof, as Michael Jordan would say. And it's the same situation with Dominique. He's the main man now, so expect him to make his presence felt. Now this isn't a prediction, but there are 2 guys who I felt they didn't get enough love last year. One of them was Zach Waldrop. He tied for the 3rd most rushing yards in our coverage with Alex Mount. Waldrop was powerful, efficient, and reliable for the Falcons last season. 20 total touchdowns and almost 1,600 yards. I foresee a lot of Zach and a lot of Miller this season. Now 1,600 yards is a lot. And Travis J. John was one of 2 players in our coverage to eclipse that. And he did it while splitting carries with Nick Cox. J. John is shifty, elusive, and more than ready to attack Wilson's rushing record of 2,046 yards. Now, J. John and Cox, this stat baffles me. They combined for over 3,100 yards. So if J. John didn't have to share, that record might have been his last year. And there are a lot of players who I left off this list, but I'm already antsy. I'm ready for week 1.
Hey, I'm ready for week 1 too, but we got to get excited about something going on in 2 days. The second Gridiron Glory Media Day. Tell us about what we're going to see there.
Oh, Media Day, Sunday at Ohio University at 11:30. There'll be free food. That'll always get me to come out. But it's time where we can talk to players, mingle with them, pick your brain. You can pick our brain. We'll interview you. There'll be a Madden room. State Representative Jay Ebers will be here talking to you. There'll be food. And it's going to be a good time. So come out, 3 to 5 players and a coach, and you're more than welcome to show up and have a good time with us.
Absolutely. I might have to grab some gunslingers, some quarterbacks, play cornhole with me. Love to have that on your team, man.
Definitely.
But all right, here we go. Our final order of business. The only thing left to do is wait until week 1 gets here. Here's a little preview of what's to come up to get you fired up for next weekend. There you have it for this week's show. I'm telling you right now, the fun is just beginning, and in my opinion, this is the absolute best time of the year. Week 1 can't get here fast enough. I mean, we have rivalry games in week 1, rivalry games at the end of the season. The entire thing is going to be crazy. So until we get it started in week 1, remember there is nothing better than Friday nights and Gridiron Glory.